Joining us in the trenches today, the Director of Strength and Conditioning for the Cincinnati Bengals, Joey Boese. And he's been with the team going into his 5th year. He came with Zach. He's been here the entire time. So has his staff. The continuity of Zach Taylor's coordinators and all the coaches, and then these strength and conditioning coaches. It's a good thing. I mean, everybody's on the same page. And in this day and age, as opposed to in the 70s and 80s, in the old days, when I was playing football for the Cincinnati Bengals, they have so many devices and instruments and things to help you now, these CPS tracking devices and or GPS, I should say, tracking devices, and ways to monitor what kind of an exertion players are giving and pull them back and increase this, make sure you hit this top speed this day, pull it back this day, diet, rest. It's just amazing what's available to players through the Cincinnati Bengals and the strength and conditioning program and the training staff and everybody involved. I mean, athletes are taken care of today, and it's smart. It's smart. Every single one of them is a significant investment. You want to take care of that investment. Joey Boese and his staff do it as well as any in the National Football League. And most importantly, the players believe they have the best system. And when the players believe, then you get something that's solid gold. Appreciate you joining us once again in the trenches with Dave Lapham, brought to you by First Star Logistics, as always in our outstanding studios at First Star Logistics. And do we have a guest for you today? If you have not caught our initial podcast with Bengals Strength and Conditioning Director Joey Boese, please do, because it's outstanding. And we brought him back for visit number 2 right here. Because
round two.
First one was so good, so entertaining. Coach, appreciate your time. I know it's busy. Training camp, geez, it's over the halfway point already. I mean, time flies, doesn't it?
Yeah, we're in it. I couldn't tell you what day it is, Dave. It's training camp. Every day is Groundhog's Day, but it's going well so far. Excited. You know, we got a walkthrough today, and then the Packers are coming in on Wednesday. Should be a great opportunity for our team to get some really quality work in.
That practice on Wednesday before the Friday night Green Bay Packers preseason game, that's almost like another preseason game. It basically is a preseason game as such for a lot of starters that, you know, might not see action on the game, in the game itself. How do you get ready for that? I mean, is it do you look at it as the director of strength and conditioning and the best in the league at that? Do you look at that as this is almost an additional preseason game? It's almost preseason game number 4?
Well, I think it's an opportunity for us to control the setting a little bit in a game, right? So right. You're getting full speed work against another opponent, and you're not bringing guys down to the ground. You know, you can kind of control. Zach and Coach LaFleurs will control some of the settings, whether we want to do red zone work, third down work. You can really put guys in situations that you want to see that you might not get an opportunity in a game, or you don't want to expose maybe one of your top line guys to a game setting quite yet.
Right. And it's an interesting thing with the success of making the runs in the playoffs that the Bengals have done, winning the division, making a run in the playoffs. 40 games counting postseason, and then 46 when you count preseason games over the last 2 years. I mean, that's a pretty good toll. That's pretty taxing, isn't it? I mean, do you have to kind of like take all that into account when you're laying out what you think you might do from a strength and conditioning standpoint with the team?
Absolutely. Dave, we're always looking at volume and intensity and how much work these guys are getting. And fortunately, in the last 2 years, they've gotten a lot of work. And I think we have adjusted our off-season plan accordingly. Even our training camp plan, the way we ramp guys up, the way we do our schedule here is probably a little bit different than how other teams do it. And everything that we do is designed to take care of our players, make sure that they are healthy as they possibly can be, and getting ready for when the real thing starts on September 10th.
there's nothing worse than players saying my legs are dead on game day. I mean, and I had teammates, back in the day, I had teammates that would say, "Oh man, I think I left my legs out on the field on Wednesdays and Thursdays practice." It's like, dude, we gotta figure something out here somehow. And you guys are so good at that. And all the players, talk about how Zach and the coaching staff really take care of them, and that word gets around. And I think that's, Joe Burrow is obviously a big factor, but that kind of a reputation that you've built, I think, is big with players on other teams. It's like, hey, they take care of players at Cincinnati. Let's move that organization up my list a little bit here.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so, Dave. I think I know we take great pride in making sure that our players feel good on game days. I played long enough as a player and even as a coach. I know what it feels like not to feel your best on game day, and that's awful. And as a performance coach, we are always thinking about that constantly. We're measuring how long practice is, how much they're running, how fast they're running, what days are off. All of those things go into accord. And like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we're aiming for September 10th. There's a certain amount of callousing the body that you have to do, not only physically, but mentally getting prepared for the grind of a season, which we all know is long and hopefully goes into, late, February is what we're hoping for. And so you have to think about that now, because if you don't, you're going to get to the midway mark and maybe run into some problems that you could have avoided.
Yeah, I mean, you as a player, you're 3-time academic All-American at Wisconsin, had a great career there. You guys won back-to-back Rose Bowls, and you also won the Sun Bowl. I mean, 3 bowl victories. You go and play up in Canada for the Calgary Stampeders, and I mean, you had a good run. And how does that experience, like you're talking about, you were there, you were on the field experiencing, what you experienced. How does that translate into what you're doing today in terms of taking care of the players as such?
I think that helps me tremendously in the job that I currently have. I remember it was a long time ago, but I remember what it feels like during training camp. I remember what it feels like after a hard game or those sort of things. And so to keep in mind, just maybe when we push and when we pull back, that helps me. It also helps the communication that we have with our players, the relationship we have. The best feedback I get is from them, and being aware enough and looking for certain signs, whether they're in the weight room or during a warm up or something, to have enough, I don't want to say common sense, but to know when, hey, we might be to the edge of it right now. We might want to pull back so we can continue to move forward.
So how do you monitor that type of thing? I know you get multiple ways to monitor players. You have tracking devices, GPSs, all that sort of thing. It's a much different day than back in the 70s and early 80s. I can tell you that was not on anybody's mind, taking care of players in that regard. What kind of instruments, tools, devices are at your disposal to help in that regard?
Well, I would tell you it's changed tremendously in the last 10 years. Even since I've been a strength coach, this will be my 16th season. We didn't have what we have now to monitor players. We use Catapult. It's a GPS system. So every time our players are on the field, they have a chip or a device in the back of their jerseys that we put in. And that tells us a number of things. It tells us how fast they're running, how many times they decelerated, accelerated, like I said, volume, the intensity. We get so many metrics off of these Catapult GPS units, and then that helps us script the week and script the practice and maybe the month to come. It also is a great indicator. We live track. So these metrics that we look at, when I say live track, we always have Garrett Swanson, who's the head of our Catapult department here. He's out at a practice on a computer every day we're out there, and he can tell us exactly how far a guy has run, how fast he's run during that practice. So if we're concerned maybe that one of our players is maybe a little sore or coming back from an injury, there's a number of ways we use it, but we can get live feedback. So we know exactly when to pull a player or if it's safe to continue to practice with this guy. And how we use it, we tell to our players three things, really. We try not to get too complicated with them: player load, quality of running, and then high speed running. So player load, as a performance staff and coaching staff, that's our job. That gives us a number of how hard that practice was for each individual player. Okay, it's on us to monitor that. The two other ones are on them: quality of running and high speed running. So when I say quality of running, if a player were to run 3,000 yards in practice, we would want at least 300 of those to be over 12 miles an hour, what we consider running. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's way more than that. Sometimes it's a little less. But what we don't want is slow, slogging, methodical practices. We want the practices to be fast. When we're out there, we don't want to be just out there kind of walking around and jogging around. We want to be crisp and fast. And then the last one we look at is high-speed running. That one's easy. Everyone loves that one. How fast is a player during practice? So we've had guys run up in the 21-mile-an-hour range at practice. We have these metrics from the game. And what we do with that is we make sure that each player is hitting those top speeds at least 2 times per week. So in a regular work week for us, Monday's a lift day and film day. Tuesday is the player day off. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday are days that we're on the field practicing. So that high-speed running, a guy could get both of his high-speed efforts on Wednesday. He's good for the week.
Right.
But we monitor that. So if a guy gets to Friday and hasn't done it, we're going to do some extra work with that player either before or after practice to make sure that they're hitting those high-speed numbers.
So what is the highest speed number that you've had since you guys have started using these devices? I mean, you said over 21 miles an hour. What's the fastest in game? And obviously in game probably would be the scenario, because in practice, you hit a high speed in practice. When you're in a game and being chased by somebody, man, you find that extra gear. What is the highest speed that you can recall?
Cheeto Awuzie ran 22.2.
Is that right?
And so that's at the top of the food chain there. We have a handful of guys, Jamar, Cam Taylor, Britt. They're in the high 21s. And not saying that those guys can't run 22 or 23. Yep. They just might not have the opportunity to do that.
Right.
And so it's a lot different than like track speed, right? Where you're just running straight ahead and no one's in your way. It's really based on opportunity sometimes when we see these high speed efforts.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Is obviously the speed is translating on the football field. These guys, this is a fast football. You can feel the speed of this football team. I can feel it every practice. It's like it's functional football speed. It's not track guys trying to play football. It's football players that can really run, like track guys, and not the reverse. I mean, and that's obviously the way you want it. And has that really shown up when you're looking at the GPSs of the entirety of the offense or the entirety of the defense, say from edge guys, linebackers, defensive backs, and then offensively with skill players, does it really show up in practices on a daily basis, that speed?
It does, and it's funny you asked that, Dave. I always give a presentation to the team when we make the final touchdowns and the 53 men are setting the roster. Before we start, I always give a presentation about how we're going to practice to the players, what each day, what we're looking for on each day. And then a big part of that is the GPS. And I always put up there a slide that's popular in the room is, the top 10 fastest guys on the team. In the last couple of years, we've done the top 5 at each position. And I can tell you, I was looking over these notes the other day, those numbers have gone up and up and up. To make that top 10 list now, you got to be running 21 miles an hour.
Wow.
Like that's to get in that where we're at. And so you're right. This is the fastest team we've had since I've been here, at least from a GPS standpoint, the monitor telling us that. And I think you see it on the field.
A guy like Sam Hubbard, when he made the historic play against the Baltimore Ravens, you got a big old defensive end / linebacker / versatile athlete that can do a lot of things for Lou Anarumo. What was that big body running at? Can you recall what his GPS number was like in that?
I think it was in the 18, 19, it's somewhere in that 19-mile-an-hour mark.
Pretty good.
And Sam works at it. Sam's a defensive edge guy for us, and he every week is out there. I think after practice, you see these guys sometimes. We call them ramp ups. And Garrett will be standing there with the monitor. We kind of have them build up, hit a top speed, shut it off. And as soon as they hit that desired number, we give them a thumbs up and they're done. But Sam is a guy who is super diligent at working at that week in and week out. So the two things that I know for sure, speed and your strength, they're not permanent. If you do not work on them, they're going to leave you. And so we tell our guys, it's kind of like a race car, right? You got to rev that engine up. So on Sunday, it's there. If you're a 21-mile-an-hour guy and during the week you're running 16, 17, and then all of a sudden you got to turn and run and hit 21 in a game, It might not be there. And so we want to make sure that our guys are fresh and tuned up for Sunday. And that's why we do some of the things we do with the GPS monitor. And Sam's an example of a guy who does that, throughout the weeks and throughout the season.
Yeah, I would think if you you have to get up to 21 miles an hour at some point during a game and you haven't gotten over 15 or 16 during the week, you have a chance of blowing a tire. I mean, you have an injury chance there.
Exactly.
Too.
Exactly. And so there's an injury prevention, reason why we do this as well. Your body's got to be accustomed to doing that.
Right.
And we have some really, really fast players. And so we just monitor it. The guys have been tremendous. I'm saying all the stuff that we do. It's really the players. It goes back to the players giving the proper effort, the players being dialed in with the plan and believing in the plan. And we've had tremendous buy-in with the Catapult over the last 4 years. It's gotten better every year. And I think the players know it's something that's going to help them perform to their best on Sunday.
So your balance is very, very interesting. Strength, endurance, speed, quickness. I mean, all of it. Everything has a pot, and how much do I put in that pot to make myself the best overall athlete and best overall performer I can be? It probably varies almost from athlete to athlete, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure. This is all individualized. I mean, some guys can handle more than others guys. Some guys need different things. And it's our job to make sure we're putting them in the best situation for them individually and then them what position group they play, right? So offensive lineman is going to need something totally different than a wide receiver and vice versa. And so body type, we also look at age, how old a player is, what experience he has to this point. And so from an intensity and volume standpoint, we look at that a lot. But making sure that we're giving the players the right things so they can perform the way their position coach asked them to perform.
So a lot of times when players get a day off and they're not on an injured list or whatever, it's because, man, they've been really taxing themselves with respect to the numbers that have been put out there on the GPS. And, recovery is a big deal. The performance and recovery of performance is as big a factor to lead to other outstanding performance, right?
Yeah. And Coach Taylor has done, in my opinion, one of the best jobs in the NFL as far as how he organizes training camp. We go 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. So we've adjusted that over the years, but really it's 2 hard days for the players. And then we have a walkthrough day, then 2 hard days for the players, and then they have a day off. So they know when it's their time to go on those 2 on days, they're giving us everything they have. And then coach is going to take care of them on that 3rd day, whether it be a walkthrough day or a day off. Recovery's come a long way since when I played and definitely when you played. The length of practices aren't the same as they used to be. We're trying to keep them as short as possible, but making sure that we're getting in the right work and everything that they need. And then the recovery stuff is huge. How these guys take care of their body when they're not in the building is critical to our success.
It is amazing to watch this group work. Even when they didn't have pads, they were maximizing every rep in terms of intensity and just watching them move from a football standpoint was impressive, and how hard they go every rep. Now that shoulder pads are on, and it's you have to learn, right? I mean, you have to learn how to practice. Some guys probably come from other organizations and haven't gone through this period that you guys have built over this 5-year span, now coming into the 5th year. And it's like, boy, I got to learn how to practice the way these guys practice a little bit.
Yeah, and that goes back to, like I said, I keep going back to it. It goes back to the leadership of the football team. Yep. Zach does a great job in team meetings explaining to the players what each tempo means, what a walk-through tempo means, what a jog-through tempo is, what thud is when we're not bringing the ball carrier to the ground, what the expectation is, and then obviously full speed or full contact. Those are kind of our 4 or 5 ways that we're going to do it. And then the players police it, right? Once the players understand, and that's progressed over the years too. The players understand how we practice, and they understand, if I'm a defensive lineman, how important the guy I'm working against is to the team, right? So whether it's DJ Reader working with Ted Karras and vice versa, they're both trying to get quality work in, but making sure that they're taking care of each other to the best of their ability.
Yeah, that's great. When I was talking to Ted Karras coming off the field the other day, and he said, I really am fortunate because I get to work against DJ Reader every day at training camp, getting ready for the season, and I'm not going to face anybody any tougher, during the season. So you start to get yourself, sharpened to a very high level very, very quickly. And when you're working against, like the defensive backs and receivers are having good battles and quality offensive line, defensive lineman battles. I mean, those kind of things are important and impressive.
That's how guys are getting better at competition. And I think we got a really good football team right now. And you watch practice, sometimes the best stuff to watch is practice, because you're watching Jamar go against Cam Taylor-Britt, or you're watching DJ and Ted battle each other. And I can go down the list of guys that are across from each other that at their position, respectively, they're one of the best players in the league.
Right. So how do you get the message across about diet and proper rest and all that sort of thing, which are key ingredients as well? Is that talked about on a almost daily basis?
Yeah, I think that goes back to the relationships we have with the players and our door always being open. We have guys coming down asking us questions, and the more you get to know the players and they get to know you, I think that some of those conversations become easier, and that's really how we do it. I think sometimes with a group of men in a room explaining, hey guys, you want to go 7 hours to 9 hours of sleep every night, and that gets a little redundant. They've heard it all before. They know what to do, but then it's dialing each guy on an individual basis and trying to help them. Most of these guys have 95% of it down themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Our job is maybe help piece together the 5%. Hey, here's a trick you could use for sleep, or here's something you might want to think about recovery, or hey, if your legs are still feeling heavy, why don't you try this trick? And some of it works for guys and some of it don't. Everyone's got a different routine. We're getting a brand new recovery center here, if you will, in a couple weeks, and I think that's going to be a huge step for our team. We're getting some different devices that they can use, which I think will help. And everybody has something different. They go to different massage people, maybe a different chiropractor, maybe some guys like dry needling, some guys don't. But the recovery tools have come a long ways in the last couple of years, Dave. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I mean, the training camp, I think it's a perfect length now. I mean, what's your feeling, Coach, about 3 or 4 preseason games, or even knocking it down to 2 in terms of preseason games? And you're a big part of it. I mean, guys train year round. They're in such good shape. What do you think? I mean, what is there a number that hits you right, or are you okay with it is now? What's your feeling on it?
We've looked at that with the data, with injury data over the last 4 or 5 years, quite a bit. I do think there is something to callousing the body and making sure that they're used to that stimulus, so you don't run into that injury bug maybe week 2 to 6 in the season. But if there was a magic pill, or if there was a perfect way to do it, I think we'd all be doing it that way.
Sure.
There's different philosophies on that. I think exposing our top line guys to just a little bit of work is a good idea. But then the balance of what is too much. Fortunately, our team has played an extra 3 or 4 games the last couple of years, and we're hoping to do that again. And so, September or whatever the preseason game is, is that game really going to affect November, December, January? I don't think so. I think the opportunity we have tomorrow against the Packers is a great opportunity to do some of that work for our top line guys.
When you sit down with Coach Taylor and the entire staff, I'm sure you guys all meet frequently together. Do you almost map out, not cast in stone, here's what we're going to do in terms of strength and conditioning for the entire season, but here's maybe like an outline, and then we can make adjustments accordingly depending on a lot of variables that might unfold during the course of the season? How do you do that? How do you take the big picture of the season and maybe, start to piece it all together? How's that process work?
Yeah, I do that with Zach a lot in the offseason. We've gone over it to where we feel right now we got a pretty fine-tuned system going with how we do it. And me and Zach, he'll sit down and I kind of say, okay, we're going to go hard here, back off here. We got a good blueprint right now. Now, the important part is once we have it mapped out, now it's the communication. Hey, we thought this was going to be a hard day. The GPS, we're too high in the numbers. We're going to back off. Being able to pivot, I think, is a very important thing to long-term success. And it starts, like I said, it starts with Zach, but then the position coaches too. There's times at practice where we'll be in a position coach's ear and he'll kind of adjust a guy, maybe an individual, maybe where you wouldn't notice a guy's getting adjusted a little bit, just to kind of ease off or make it a little bit easier on that player based on some of the GPS data that we have. But we lay it out, and I say it's not like one meeting. So we'll lay out kind of this thing, and then we'll meet again, maybe tweak a couple things, meet again. By the time we get to this time of year, training camp, Zach's got a great plan for what this period of time looks like, and then in through the season. And then if we have to adjust, be willing to adjust.
With the success that you talked about that the teams had the last couple of years, becomes more national attention, and long weeks and short weeks. It's not Sunday at 1:00 every day or every week is the game. You're playing on Thursday nights, you're playing Saturday afternoons, Saturday night, Sunday, Monday. You play almost every day of the week, it seems like. How crazy is that in terms of trying to schedule around that type of scenario?
It makes it harder. If you're playing every week at 1:00, it's pretty not simple, but it makes it a lot easier to plan things out, especially when you start talking about playing on prime time. So prime time or night games. Now you're saying night game on the road. Okay, night game on the road means you're getting back to town 3:30 in the morning. And so what does that do? That adjusts guys rest the next day. That adjusts what you want to do the next day. That might affect what you do on Wednesday because – that 48 hours, you want to make sure players are recovering properly. You start talking about Thursday games, Sunday night games, all those things. I think when the schedule comes out, I am one guy who is glued to the television to find out when's our bye week, when's the primetime games, what's the week after that, what's the week before that. But from a planning standpoint, that does make it a little bit more difficult to make sure that the players are rested enough for what's coming ahead of them.
You find that sometimes you're in a situation where these athletes are so highly trained. It's like they're thoroughbreds, and thoroughbreds will just run themselves into the ground. Unless they're, hey, pull the reins back a little bit. Do you have to, I bet some players really appreciate you guys saying, hey guys, we love the way you're working. You're working your tails off, but man, we got to pull it back a little bit here and there. Because they just continue to almost run themselves into the ground. Some guys, I bet.
Yeah, Dave, we have a ton of guys that fall into that category.
Right.
And so it's our job. Those are the kind of guys you want on your team. You want hard charger, gritty guys who are about ball. And we have a roster full of those guys. That being said, sometimes you have to protect them against themselves.
Yeah.
Right. And so more is not always better. And so especially in the course of a football season, we definitely take those into consideration. And then knowing our players, right? We have we have to know who our hard charging guys are and how to communicate with them to appeal to them that, hey, this is in your best interest to maybe pull it back today, or maybe not come in today and take a rest day away from the building. So the balance of that is tricky at times, but we're always going to err on the side of making sure that our guys are healthy and feeling good. And when in doubt, I prefer to be more conservative than push.
Quality over quantity, I mean, it's kind of a broad-based thing, but I mean, it makes sense in a lot of areas. There's no doubt.
And it helps when you have a coaching staff that is open to these ideas. It starts with Zach, but it trickles down through our whole staff. Our whole staff understands how we plan the year, how we plan training camp. And so when I go to Rob Livingston and say, hey, Rob, Nick Scott was high the last 2 days. If we can, let's pull him off. And I get no pushback. Rob is on board. Absolutely. Let's see if we can do this, and get him back on track. That makes our job as a performance staff a lot easier.
And you just hit on a great final point. The fact that, you and your staff are in the 5th year, with Zach and his staff in their 5th year, and just about everybody has been there for that time frame. All the coordinators, the head coach and all the coordinators, offense, defense, special teams, the entire time frame trickles down to a good number of the assistants. When everybody's been on that same page and putting this thing together over a 5-year time frame, how valuable is that?
Invaluable, I think. I mean, it's continuity, consistency is very, very big in the way that we do things. Now, everyone knows. You're not explaining things, oh, this is the why we're doing it. Now, we're refreshing these guys constantly on this is why we're doing practice like this, or this is why we're giving them an off day here. We do that, but everyone understands the system, and it makes our job a lot easier when everyone is bought into the same idea.
Well, you've done a heck of a job. I'm telling you, Coach. You got this football team is in as good a shape and is physical and fast as any football team in the National Football League. And I'll tell you, it's they really believe in what you're doing. I know they've bought in.
I appreciate it, Dave. Like I said before, I take a lot of pride in what I do, and so do Todd and Garrett and the training staff. Everybody here, is pushing for the big goal. We all want the same thing, and hopefully we can get that done this year.
It's coming. It's going to happen. Appreciate your time. I know it's valuable, Coach. Thanks for giving us some.
No problem, Dave. See you at practice, man. Appreciate it.
You're the man. Thank you.
All right. See you.
Dave Lapham here, and every day I am grateful for my experience to have played professional football. As a player, I realized self-motivation, leadership, and appreciating your teammates are key. At First Star Logistics, you can use those same attributes to create the life you want for you and your family. Build your future by working hard like I did. You'll see results both on and off the field. Call First Star Logistics today and be part of our winning team.
Opportunity knocking.